What you're about to hear isn't the sanitized version of jungle warfare taught in military academies. According to declassified reconnaissance summaries and first-hand sniper journals, the deadliest threat faced by U.S. forest snipers in Southeast Asia was not always a man with a rifle. Sometimes, it didn't even make a sound. Before the first shot was fired, before the first enemy silhouette appeared through a scope, the jungle had already begun its assault. The air was thick, heavy. Breathing felt like pulling moisture straight into the lungs. Every movement produced sound: fabric brushing leaves, boots sinking into rot, insects scattering in sudden bursts. Above, the canopy sealed the world shut, blocking sunlight so completely that time itself became hard to measure. Day and night blurred into a single, oppressive stretch of green darkness. Military records show that sniper teams deployed into these forests were trained to disappear, to become motionless, invisible observers. But what the training manuals rarely emphasized was this: the jungle was alive, and it was hunting too. From the moment a sniper team went static, the psychological pressure began to build. You couldn't scratch. You couldn't swat. You couldn't react. Leeches crawled beneath uniforms, attaching silently. Ants formed living rivers across exposed skin. Mosquitoes hovered endlessly, carrying diseases that could incapacitate a man faster than any bullet. Still. Silent. Waiting. Veterans later described the realization as deeply unsettling. The longer you remained hidden, the more vulnerable you became, not to detection, but to nature itself. Venomous snakes blended perfectly with roots and vines. Predatory cats moved without warning. Even the ground-concealed threats, punji pits abandoned by enemy forces, now overgrown and indistinguishable from natural terrain. One sniper recalled lying motionless for nearly 12 hours, eyes fixed through his scope, when a sharp pressure wrapped around his calf. Not a bullet. Not a trap. A snake, coiled and warm, resting against his leg. He didn't move. He couldn't. The rules of survival demanded silence, even if it meant accepting death. This was the mental battlefield few anticipated. Training emphasized breathing control, trigger discipline, and target acquisition. But nothing prepared these men for the sustained psychological strain of knowing that at any second, something unseen could strike from inches away. The jungle punished hesitation and punished panic even more severely. Every patrol deeper into the forest forced tactical adaptation. Snipers adjusted observation times to avoid peak insect activity. Teams modified camouflage to deter snakes. Medical kits expanded to include antivenoms and disease suppressants. But no amount of preparation eliminated the fear, only managed it. And fear, in this environment, was contagious. Morale eroded quietly. Not through firefights, but through exhaustion. Through fever. Through the constant sensation of being surrounded by teeth, fangs, stingers, and parasites. Combat stress didn't always come from the enemy. Often, it came from lying alone in the mud, listening to something large move just beyond sight. Silent. Sudden. Fatal. This was the beginning of a new understanding of warfare, one where the ecosystem itself became an active combatant. And as missions pushed further into swamps and forgotten trails, the threats grew more intimate, more personal, and far more psychologically damaging. Because in these forests, survival wasn't just about aiming true. It was about enduring what crept, crawled, and waited in the dark. Pay close attention to this part, because this is where the jungle stopped being background scenery and became an executioner. According to after-action reports from reconnaissance units, venomous snakes were responsible for more emergency evacuations than enemy fire in certain operational zones. They didn't charge. They didn't warn. They waited perfectly still, camouflaged so completely that even trained observers failed to notice them until it was too late. Pit vipers, krites, cobras. Names spoken quietly, almost superstitiously, by sniper teams before moving out. These animals favored the same terrain snipers did: shaded ground, fallen logs, root systems, and low branches ideal for concealment. The overlap was deadly. Snipers learned quickly that crawling was often more dangerous than walking. Every hand placement was a gamble. Every pause risked proximity to something coiled and patient. Veterans described the sound, not a rattle, but a soft disturbance in leaves, followed by an explosive strike that felt more like being punched than bitten. The venom worked fast. Medical doctrine assumed rapid evacuation, but jungle reality rarely allowed it. Extraction could take hours, sometimes days. Men learned to watch their teammates' pupils, skin color, breathing. A single bite could turn a precision mission into a race against swelling tissue and organ failure. But snakes weren't the most persistent enemy. Insects were everywhere. Mosquitoes moved in clouds so dense they appeared like smoke. They carried malaria, dengue, and other fevers that stripped strength and clarity from even the most disciplined operators. A sniper weakened by illness became a liability not because he couldn't shoot, but because he couldn't stay still. Leeches attached silently, swelling with blood under uniforms. Soldiers discovered them only when they stood up and felt warmth pooling in their boots. Removing them was slow, deliberate work. Panic meant bleeding. Movement meant detection. The psychological toll was relentless. Imagine lying prone for hours, knowing that something might crawl into your ear, your mouth, your uniform. And knowing you are not allowed to react. One veteran described the sensation as being eaten alive in installments. The body screamed for motion. The mission demanded absolute restraint. Predators added another layer of tension. Tigers and leopards were rare, but their presence was undeniable. Tracks appeared near observation posts. Distant growls echoed through foggy mornings. Snipers were trained to ignore fear, but instinct is difficult to suppress when you realize you are not the apex predator in this environment. These threats forced changes. Teams adjusted insertion times. Observation windows shortened. Movement routes avoided known nesting zones. But avoidance was never perfect. The jungle adapted faster than doctrine. And slowly, something changed inside the men. Hypervigilance became permanent. Sleep came in fragments. Even back at base, many reported phantom sensations, crawling skin, imagined pressure, sudden jolts of fear with no visible cause. The mind never truly left the forest. This wasn't fear of combat in the traditional sense. There was no enemy to confront, no strategy to outmaneuver. Only the knowledge that survival depended on enduring discomfort, pain, and terror without reacting. The jungle didn't need bullets. It only needed time. By the third phase of deployment, many sniper teams realized something unsettling: the jungle no longer felt like terrain. It felt like a trap. Official unit logs describe entire operations slowed to a crawl, not by enemy contact, but by the ground itself. Swamps, mangroves, and forgotten trails transformed simple movement into an exhausting, nerve-shredding ordeal. Every step sank. Every sound echoed too loudly in the mind. Waterlogged soil hid dangers that no scope could reveal. Punji pits, some abandoned months earlier, were reclaimed by vegetation so completely they looked natural. Leaves covered sharpened stakes smeared with filth and toxins. One misstep was enough to cripple a soldier permanently. Snipers learned to probe the earth inch by inch, advancing at a pace that felt unbearably slow, knowing speed meant injury, or worse. Still. Careful. Measured. But even caution failed. Water concealed parasites and bacteria that entered through the smallest cuts. Feet softened and split after days submerged, infections spreading silently. Jungle rot ate away skin. Fever blurred judgment. A sniper with compromised mobility wasn't just vulnerable, he was endangered every man in the team. Reports mention a recurring psychological effect: distrust of the environment. Veterans said they stopped seeing paths and started seeing threats. A fallen log wasn't cover. It was a possible nest. A quiet pool wasn't rest. It was contamination. The mind remained locked in threat assessment mode, hour after hour, day after day. Night amplified everything. Darkness in the jungle wasn't absence of light, it was density. Sound traveled strangely. Movements felt closer than they were. Something splashing in water could be a fish, or something larger. Snipers learned to control breathing, not to steady a shot, but to keep panic from rising in the chest. One account describes a teen pinned in position overnight as something large circled their hide site. No visual contact. Just pressure. Footsteps. The slow crushing of undergrowth. They never confirmed what it was. They didn't need to. The message was clear, they were not alone. The mental strain accumulated quietly. Men stopped talking unless necessary. Humor disappeared. Communication became mechanical. Survival narrowed into a tunnel: observe, endure, extract. Thoughts of home felt distant, almost irrelevant, compared to the immediate demands of the environment. Doctrine adapted again. Snipers shortened missions. Rotations increased. Commanders recognized that prolonged exposure to these conditions degraded effectiveness faster than enemy resistance. The jungle wasn't just wearing down bodies, it was reshaping minds. And yet, missions continued. Because intelligence still needed gathering. Targets still needed watching. And somewhere ahead, deeper in the forest, awaited threats that would push these men even further, beyond fear, beyond fatigue, into something colder. Something permanent. By this stage, the danger was no longer limited to what crawled, bit, or stalked in the undergrowth. It had crossed a threshold. Field psychologists reviewing post-mission reports noticed a pattern that couldn't be explained by combat exposure alone. Snipers returning from extended jungle operations displayed symptoms usually associated with prolonged captivity, sensory distortion, heightened startle responses, and a constant expectation of attack even in safe zones. The jungle had taught them something brutal. That safety was an illusion. During long observation missions, time lost meaning. Minutes stretched into hours. Hours collapsed into moments of sudden alertness. A dripping leaf could sound like footsteps. A shifting shadow could trigger a full adrenaline surge. The body reacted before the mind could reason. Veterans described seeing movement that wasn't there. Feeling weight on their backs when nothing touched them. Hearing breathing that didn't belong to anyone on their team. These weren't hallucinations in the clinical sense. They were survival adaptations pushed beyond their limit. The most dangerous enemy now was anticipation. Every nerve stayed primed. Muscles remained tense for days. Sleep, when it came, was shallow and fragmented. The mind never powered down, it hovered, waiting for the next threat. And when nothing happened, the silence itself became unbearable. One sniper wrote that the jungle felt angry at stillness, as if remaining hidden too long provoked it. Insects swarmed more aggressively. Animals approached closer. Weather shifted suddenly. Rationally, he knew this wasn't true. Emotionally, it felt undeniable. This constant pressure altered decision-making. Snipers became more cautious, sometimes excessively so. Others grew numb, taking calculated risks just to escape the suffocating stillness. Neither extreme was ideal. Both were born from the same source, an environment that eroded mental resilience without firing a shot. Command began to acknowledge the invisible cost. Debriefings shifted focus. Questions weren't just about enemy movement anymore. They were about sleep. About fear. About moments when discipline nearly broke. And yet, what made these men effective was the same thing destroying them: their ability to endure. To remain silent while ants bit. To stay motionless while something breathed nearby. To suppress every instinct screaming to move, run, or fight. The jungle rewarded patience with survival. But it demanded payment in psychological scars. By the time teams prepared for extraction, many felt relief not from completing the mission, but from escaping a place that had been watching them the entire time. A place that left marks no medical kit could treat. And still, there was one final realization waiting. One that would follow them long after the war ended. What military historians would later come to understand is this. For many U.S. forest snipers, the war did not end when the helicopter lifted them out of the jungle. The sound of rotors shattered the canopy. Leaves exploded outward under the force of the blades. Light poured into spaces that had been dark, wet, and suffocating for weeks. From above,
The forest looked endless, an unbroken ocean of green.
To command staff, it was just terrain marked on maps.
To the men leaving it behind, it felt alive. Watchful. Unfinished. Extraction should have meant relief. And in a way, it did. Bodies finally moved freely.
Muscles unclenched.
Weapons lowered.
But mentally, many snipers never truly left that environment. The jungle had rewritten their internal definition of danger.
After-action reports focused on confirmed kills, enemy movement, and mission success. But in the margins, medical notes, psychological evaluations, personal letters, another story unfolded.
One of men who flinched at sudden sounds.
Who couldn't sleep without scanning the room.
Who felt exposed in open spaces, as if something unseen was watching from the edges.
Back at base, silence felt wrong.
Beds felt too soft. Clean air felt empty. Some veterans described waking in panic, convinced they were still prone in the mud, unable to move, insects crawling across their skin. Others reported phantom sensations, pressure on a leg, a tickle behind the ear, the imagined presence of something just out of sight.
These weren't weaknesses. They were adaptations that no longer had a place to turn off. The jungle had trained them with ruthless efficiency. It taught patience far beyond doctrine. It taught endurance under constant threat.
It taught control not just of the trigger, but of the body itself.
To ignore pain. To suppress instinct.
To remain still even when every nerve screamed to move. But the cost of that control was heavy. Veterans later explained that conventional combat felt almost predictable by comparison. An armed enemy followed patterns.
Tactics. Signals. Nature did not. A snake didn't announce itself. Disease didn't care about rank. Predators didn't respect camouflage or courage.
That randomness, combined with isolation, created a form of stress unlike anything else in war. Modern military doctrine quietly reflects these lessons.
Jungle training expanded. Survival instruction evolved.
Commanders learned that morale could be destroyed without a single firefight simply by forcing humans to exist too long in environments never meant to be dominated.
In Southeast Asia's forests, wildlife was not a background hazard.
It was an active combatant.
It shaped movement. It shortened missions. It altered strategy. And it left psychological scars equal to any battlefield trauma.
The snipers who endured it carried something home with them, not trophies, not stories easily told, but an understanding few civilians could ever grasp.
That war isn't always loud. It doesn't always announce itself with gunfire and explosions. Sometimes it crawls. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it bites.
And sometimes, long after the shooting stops, it follows you home quietly, patiently, living just beneath the surface of the mind. If this story changed how you see combat, honor those who lived it.
Leave a like.
Subscribe for more untold histories of war.
And remember, some battlefields never truly let you go.